Everyone, Road to Boston Day 8 is here, and today we're going to be talking about your peak week, which is a term that's kind of been thrown around a lot recently when people are training for marathons. Essentially, this is going to be your highest mileage week, talking about when to time this, different things you can do during that peak week, what it all is, and things to kind of mitigate the extra stress that comes from increased miles in your marathon build for the Boston Marathon. So essentially, what this should include your general buildup, everything you've been doing, you're continuing to build up all the way through your training cycle with, the right amount of intensity, miles, and things like that. And typically what people are referring to in terms of peak week is their most miles in a week. And there should be that safe progression. You're not going from, say, 50 miles to 80 miles from your second highest week to peak week, that kind of thing. So there should be that logical progression. We've talked about some things when it comes to that previously in this series. But the real reason why peak week is going to be your highest mileage week isn't really so much that you're adding a whole bunch everywhere else, is that it's typically your longest long run is going to be included in your peak week. When do you want to time this? The typical rule is that you're going to do this about 21 days, the long run itself, and the week that includes this would be peak week. 21 days before your goal race, that's typically when you want this to be your longest long run, which is then going to be your peak week. So we're not talking about, you're probably talking about an extra mile or two during your peak week for most people in most situations, essentially. That long run, I always sort of recommend doing that based on time and not distance. So it's going to be your longest time on your feet. And then if you continue to do everything correctly, this then should become your longest long run, weather permitting and all those different things that can impact your long run essentially. But don't make it so much longer simply because you want it to be. Maybe you're taking all those safe parameters into effect. We did already a video in this series on your long run, different things you can do for it. You definitely maybe want to take a look at that when you're planning your longest long run. And the previous video in this this series, we talked about fueling on your long runs. That's going to be a really key thing here in your peak week, because you're still dealing with all your day-to-day stress of things like work, family commitments, everything else that you normally have going on. But now you're adding this extra layer of stress of more mileage, and your race is coming up, so you have that excitement, but that's still a stress of that's going to include here in peak week, because it's still kind of far out, but you can kind of feel those different things kind of impacting everything. So what can you do to kind of add to this? We talked about fueling. Make sure you're getting enough food, especially carbohydrates. Distance runners, I can't say this enough, you need more carbohydrates than most people. Whatever amount of carbohydrates you're getting is probably not enough. The typical recommendation currently is that anywhere from 45 to 55% of your calories come from carbohydrates. Your distance runners need to be at that 55. You need to have a ton of carbohydrates. That's going to help not only with fueling those runs, but there's some pretty interesting new research that talks about when you're taking in more carbohydrates, your body can actually do things like repair your muscles better. It's not just fuel for running fast or activities like we used to think. Your body's not going to be able to rebuild muscle repair from all these extra miles if you're not giving yourself enough carbohydrates. So make sure you're adding those things in, and just make sure you're getting generally some good healthy options. If you're having a little bit more inflammation, you can do things like healthy fats, like your avocados, olive oil, that kind of thing can help with some of the inflammation. But just please make sure you're getting enough calories. It's really, really critical for people to get enough calories. And we mentioned this in a previous video where they were talking about low energy availability in people in the Boston Marathon in 2022 and how their race was negatively impacted for a couple reasons. We're going to do a whole separate video on that study because I think it's really interesting, but cannot implore this enough. Make sure you're getting enough calories, in particular carbohydrates. A couple other things you can definitely do, and these are not super fancy, anything that people don't necessarily already know, but it's great to be reminded. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. This is going to be even more critical as you're having more miles, more stress, all these other things we're talking about. Getting enough fuel and sleep is going to be critical. Whatever that looks like for you, that could include taking naps. It's not a bad thing to have to take naps to get to that amount of level of rest. But if you're going to be, kind of chronically, maybe say you're getting 6 hours of sleep and you're someone that needs 8, if you're doing that all throughout the week and then you're trying to catch up on the weekend, you're 10 hours in sleep debt. So make sure that you're really kind of prioritizing these things, especially here in peak weeks, so that you can really use all this training you're doing and not overtrain yourself, essentially. And then try your best to also limit some of these stressors. Basically, your body deals with positive stress, negative stress, in the same way, and it can't really tell the difference between different things. So even if things are going fantastically in your life along with all your training and everything, just make sure that you're doing those kind of de-stressors. If you have different things like maybe journaling, maybe you're someone that meditates, maybe you're somebody that goes on, you know, walks or draws or something like that, make sure that whatever those things are that help you to de-stress, that you're still keeping those active in your life and trying to manage some of these stress levels. That might mean saying no to something during this time frame because you have all this extra fatigue on your body and you want to make sure that you're using all of this properly. So those are ways to kind of mitigate this peak week when you're doing all these things. So because you're going to have, again, you're going to have your intensity. You're probably having your marathon pace work. Maybe you're someone that likes to do a lot of intensity during your long runs. Again, I have a whole video on that. Make sure you're doing that safely. You're still probably doing hills at this point. You're still probably doing a lot of other things. Make sure that as you're into this peak week, you know, you're timing it correctly. You're not doing it way too early or way too close to your race. Again, 21 days out is typically the best time, or right around that, you know, 22, 20. It's not really a big deal for you to hit your longest long run before it, and that's going to really kind of be the reason why your peak week is what it is. So if you do have any questions about maybe timing of some of your last long run, your other workouts and things like that during your peak week, or maybe how to mitigate some of these things, send us a message, leave a comment down below, and I'll be happy to answer any of those. Next thing we're going to be talking about after peak week is going to be the taper. So that will be what we chat about next, different strategies for how you can use all the fitness that you've gained during this season.